I call the special meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, September 1st, 2020 to order. And as has been shared previously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, special meeting is being held electronically as allowed for by the Iowa Code. If you want to offer any input on the item, you can do so by going to zoom.us/J, number 826-593-023. You can also access this online on the cityofames.org website under government, city council meetings and agenda, and get a hot link there. Or you can call online, you can call toll free at 1-888-475-4499. And we will go ahead and get started. And before we get started, I just want to make a couple of quick opening comments to those in the general public. Last week, I made the comment that council will not be considering this first reading until next Tuesday night, not knowing or anticipating how much would change in the course of a few days. Our infection rate just skyrocketed, the government of closing bars, and with the just reflection on all of that, determined that it was important for us to consider this earlier, and so we put out press releases and tried to use social media to get this information out. We do not take lightly making changes or changing what we tell people during meetings. But this is an extraordinary situation that I believe that warranted calling a special meeting. And so tonight, that is the one item on the agenda, and that is the first reading of the mandatory face covering ordinance as prepared by the attorney at the direction of City Council. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark and ask him just to hit the highlights of what are included, and then we will open up for council discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, you have in front of you the ordinance as you directed me to draft it after looking at the draft version last week. And we've added in language clarifying that a child care facility is not considered a public setting or facility where the public's invited in. And then also removed any penalties and replaced it with language saying that compliance with this ordinance shall be obtained through education and encouragement only. There is no penalty for a violation of this ordinance. That is the situation.
Excuse me, Council and Mark. I jumped right over public forum that is on the agenda. And so I just want to push pause on this, Council, and I'm going to open up public forum and to the public. We will be allowing public comment on this ordinance and council's discussion as a part of the item on the agenda. So is there anyone who wishes to address City Council on any topic that's not on the agenda this evening? And Brian, I'll look to you to see if anyone raises their hand showing interest.
Mayor, I see that Vanessa Burnett has her hand raised. Vanessa, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and begin your comments after you state your name and address for the record.
And just, again, just as long as it's not related to this ordinance.
Yeah, I had my hand raised before that was clarified.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. We'll make sure you get called on the agenda, when the agenda. Thank you. Appreciate your sharing that with us. Anybody else, Brian?
Mayor, I do not see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, so we will close public forum, and then Mark shared an opening statements, and we open up for council discussion prior to going to public comment.
So I can just kick it off. I would like to make a motion to reconsider our last motion at the council meeting, specifically the motion to approve the draft ordinance, but replace section 4 with a statement explaining there will be no penalty.
I'll second.
All right, moved by Junk, seconded by Corriere. Any questions on the motion? Hearing no questions, tonight, council, just to make sure everyone's aware of who we're voting on, we're going to go to roll call vote, even though it's not necessary. So, Diane, roll call, please.
Etcher?
No.
Garten?
Nay.
Junk?
Aye.
Corriere?
Aye.
Martin?
Nay.
Beatty Hansen?
Aye.
That was a 3-3. Is that correct, Diane?
That's correct.
Okay, motion failed. Anything else? I know council got an email requesting some clarification regarding members of households being out walking around. Is there any discussion relative to that particular item? I think the idea was that I think the intent was that if you're with family members or someone you're living, with, that may be an exception. Mark, can you comment on that? And if council has no interest in that, that's fine. We'll move on. But just you and I talked about that before the meeting.
Yeah, a member of the public had written to the council suggesting a change, and I'm going to put my fingers on it here. I can't seem to find it, but the gist of it was that under section 1A, it says outside whenever the person cannot stay at least 6 feet away from others. To add to that, after the word others, who are not family members. If anyone has the actual wording that the person suggested, I had it here earlier, but it seemed to get lost in the shuffle. But that's the gist of it.
John, would you like to take motions on this topic now?
Certainly.
Okay, so I do have the language that was sent. I think it's good language. The suggestion is to modify section 1A so that it reads, well, I guess we need to have the whole thing in front of me to make sense. Okay, it currently reads that every person must wear a face covering under the following circumstances. A, outside whenever the person cannot stay at least 6 feet away from others. The proposal is to change that so that it says outside whenever the person cannot stay at least 6 feet away from others, not in the person's household.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion?
I have a question. So how would, I mean, what we're doing now doesn't have any enforcement, but how would anyone know who is in someone's household, and how would we go about proving that? I agree with the sentiment. It seems awkward that people from the same household should be able to walk down the street together, but if there was ever an effort to put an enforcement mechanism, it seems like it'd make it very difficult for the police to enforce.
Well, Tim, I can only say that that's probably true about a lot of the provisions of this. The idea is to, have the rule that's out there and hope that people comply. I mean, it's like the provision that says that, people in a vehicle together who are not family members have to wear masks. I mean, I don't think the police are going to be pulling people over and checking IDs to make sure they're family members. So it's language that's there that can be enforced. And certainly if the police stopped somebody and they said, hey, you should be wearing a mask, and they said, well, we're spouses. I think, that pretty much ends that conversation.
Further comments or questions?
Would it include roommates?
Yes.
So I missed hearing whether this was actually made as a motion or not. My internet is having issues. So could you recap for me whether David actually made a motion to change the wording?
Certainly, Gloria. The motion was, actually, we'll let Diane, if you want to go ahead and repeat what transpired.
It was made by Martin and seconded by Corriere to modify section 1A so that it reads outside whenever the person cannot stay 6 feet away from others not in the person's household.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Mark, are there other situations that may warrant this in terms of I believe it's council's intent that it's not every person, including people who are living in a household. It's more or less, and it's intended to be more people are not in a person's household, but I don't want to speak for council. I just want to make sure we get it clear before we go ahead and take public comment and any action on the proposed first reading.
Yeah, I read through the draft ordinance again, proposed ordinance here, and looked for maybe if there were other places that it would make sense to insert that, and it really seemed to me that was the only place.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to amend the proposed ordinance. Roll call, please.
Martin?
Aye.
Junk?
Aye.
Corriere?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Edie Hansen?
Aye.
Etcher?
Aye.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I would like to talk about the sunset provision. I think it's very wise that we have one. It seems that May of 2021 is a bit farther out. I think that it would be wise for us to revisit this earlier. And so I would propose at the end of this calendar year, the end of December, that this ordinance would lapse unless renewed. So I'll just make a motion and see if people want this or not. I would move to change that date to December 31st, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion.
I have a similar concern. There's no provision for ending this other than just the sunset. So even if the health conditions improve, we still deprive people of their liberty and freedom without any medical justification to do so. So the date is artificial, but at least moving it up requires council to go back and renew it if they think that the situation warrants it.
Any other comments? All right, roll call on the proposed motion.
Junk,
Aye.
Coriari,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, we're going to go ahead and open up public comment on this proposed ordinance. And Brian, just to get a gauge on how many people are wanting to address council. If those are interested in addressing council on this topic, if you would raise your hand at this time, and Brian, let's try and get a count like last week, and then we'll make a determination on length of time for public comment.
Mayor, I see that 8 individuals have their hands raised. 10.
Okay. All right. We're going to ask the public when we start doing public comment to, like previously, state your name and your address. And as last week, if someone offers input or comments that you are essentially going to offer in the same way, if you could just say, I agree with what the previous speaker said, so we don't have redundancy. I don't want to limit people's ability to offer a comment. You're certainly invited to do so, but we like to just make sure that we allow adequate time and people a chance to speak and it's not have redundancy. So we'll allow 3 minutes for each individual after you state your name and address. And Brian, let's go ahead and get started.
Mayor, the first person to speak is Cynthia Paschen. You may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cynthia Paschen. I live at 2117 Graber Street in Ames. I have lived in Ames most of my life. And for most of my life, I've been married to Dr. Paschen, who is the chair of the Story County Board of Health, long-suffering volunteer, Dr. Paschen. Dr. Paschen got a lot of international press today over the opening up of football games at Iowa State. 25,000 people are expected at the first home game on September 12th. So you can imagine, in the comments section of newspapers from Great Britain to Germany to New York, what people think about this decision. And it's mostly not good. I am talking tonight as a surrogate for my husband because he's at work taking care of patients. So my question, and John and I have had this conversation, but I really don't understand it. David Martin may be the one who knows more about this. If the city council passes an ordinance with no teeth, no penalty, which, they can do that. But my question is, how does that interface with an ordinance passed by the Story County Board of Supervisors based on recommendations from the Board of Health that may have teeth, that may have a penalty, that may have a stronger recommendation than the one you're considering? And that's my question, and I'll stop talking. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Cindy. And we will have Mark answer that question when we're done with public comment. And Mark, I presume you'll be prepared to address that.
Mayor, the next speaker is Lissa. Lissa, you may unmute yourself, introduce yourself with your name and address, and begin your comments.
Hello, my name is Lissa Rosengren, and my address is 614 Hodge Avenue. I can appreciate that you all have brought your best intentions to the table. Following are some questions and concerns. What is the role of government? Is it to protect people from themselves? When? At what point? Is it to guard liberties? Is government more or less effective when it creates more laws? I am opposed to this mandate in general, but definitely as written. To the statement, "Your freedom ends where my nose begins," or other similar statements, American government has always protected individuals' right to a certain amount or kind of sovereignty or freedom, even when it seems to infringe on others' freedom. For example, I like fireworks and want to set them off. My neighbor doesn't, but my right to set them off is protected. Likewise, my neighbor wants to use pesticides on their yard, spraying their yard, which inevitably creeps into my yard, but that is protected. My neighbor smokes in their yard, but that inevitably infringes on my desire to not have smoke in my vicinity, but that is protected because they are in their yard. I don't want barking dogs in my neighborhood, but that right is protected to an extent because my neighbors want those barking dogs. Similarly, healthcare decisions may impact others, but we have set the precedent of protecting individual rights, and that is part of the natural tension of living in a community. What is the purpose of masking ultimately? Do we want to see fewer positive cases? How many? Do we want to see fewer hospitalizations? How many? 0 is not realistic. Early on, the public was told the goal of these different measures was to live in such a way as to not burden our healthcare system. But the goals have seemed to continually change. Even the stated reason for rushing this ordinance into place did not mention the number of hospital beds available or anything related to our local hospitals' current ability to care for COVID patients. I would like to see parameters in writing added to this ordinance so that we're basing decisions on data in context. This will serve as a check on government and enable us to know when we can lift the mask ordinance. What else can we expect or anticipate regarding future ordinances to stem the tide of COVID? I just read a Time article dated August 26, 2020, titled "COVID-19 is transmitted through aerosols. We have enough evidence, now it is time to act." In that article, author Jose Luis Jimenez writes that there is evidence that COVID is transmitted through the eyes. Fauci has also stated this. Would it be reasonable to expect ordinances requiring eyewear? Is there a point at which there would be a consensus amongst you that X would be going too far? I urge you to consider what rights an individual is due. I would like to see exemptions in writing for places of worship also. Please respect our freedom to worship how we please, as stated in the First Amendment to the Constitution, the free exercise of religion. Thank you for considering these concerns.
Melissa.
The next speaker is Vanessa Burnett. Vanessa, you can unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Burnett, and I am at 2805 Northridge Parkway, number 104. Okay. I sent every city council member a letter on March 27th with no indication that a single one of you read it, with the exception of Mayor Hala. What a sucker I was. It was a letter full of information about how you could get ahead of this virus based on my expertise as a disaster management professional. You can't even pass the most basic public health measure to mandate the wearing of masks in this town, which with the penalty, which I didn't even include in that March 27th letter because I assumed it was common sense. It's freaking September and now we're a world coronavirus hotspot. You've had 5 months to get ahead of this. You've deliberately chosen not to. I moved to Ames from the Washington, D.C. area because I thought it would be the safest place to be in the case of a huge catastrophe, which was likely inevitable. I would be safer back in the D.C. area in a crowded city with 5.5 million people than I would be out here in the sticks with a bunch of people who don't believe in science. When the refrigerated morgue trucks start showing up here, or when we have to convert the ice rink to store bodies, I will remember your votes, and I'll remember your votes tonight. I'm going to hold you to them because every one of those bodies has your name on it. You've had 5 months. Now we're a world hotspot. Instead of spending time worrying about making the city a great place to live on some far-off list, maybe you should have been spending your time making it into a place the people living here could freaking survive. You all were elected to serve. That means trying to keep us alive, not trying to protect some BS freedoms for people who are too selfish to take care of the rest of us by following even the most basic virus mitigation spread measures. My freedom ends when people can't be bothered to mitigate the potential asymptomatic virus spread from their own breath. I beg you, please take care of us. You were elected to help us stay alive.
Thank you, Vanessa.
The next speaker is Jet Berger.
Hi there. I'm actually not Jet. I'm Abby Berger. I live at 420 Ash Avenue. And I want to thank all of you council members for all the time that you put into helping us here in our city. We really appreciate that. I am against the mask ordinance in all forms. I believe that it is an infringement of our individual liberty that is very important. I don't believe it's healthy, specifically for children, but for all people to go around wearing masks. I am not anti-science, I'm very for science. But in science, we need to look at actual facts, actual numbers in context. And I don't believe that this virus necessitates wearing masks. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abby.
The next speaker is Luann Jensen.
Actually, this is Dixon Jensen instead of Luann. And I'd like to address the council tonight concerning the COVID-19. We clearly have seen the turmoil, destruction, and even death of the virus that is caused here in Ames, our state, our country, and our world. The consequences are overwhelming, and they have changed the world as it functions. I believe the city council, as leaders of this community and of our citizens of Ames, all want the same thing. We want the virus to go away and life to be normal again. However, that is not going to happen in the near future. So our medical experts are stating that to help lessen the spread of the virus, we should live differently by using higher hygiene standards and wearing face coverings. Thus, we are here tonight to discuss the mask mandate. The main goal of the ordinance, as stated by council, is to educate and encourage our Ames citizens on how important face coverings are to slow the spread. The ordinance has no penalties for violation of not wearing a mask. I come tonight with an additional idea to add to the goal of educating our citizens on social distancing, face coverings, and so on. That idea is not to put a penalty for violation of the ordinance, but instead publicize through signage, social media, and so on the importance of the ordinance. Likewise, I suggest positive rewards, gift certificates to be handed out by our police department for those individuals abiding by the ordinance. The safety and well-being of our citizens is of the utmost importance. But as stated by council, so is our economy to be strong. We need the students of Iowa State University living in Ames. We need ISU football games played in Ames. We need events and activities in Ames. Our businesses are hurting, and some of our businesses are dying because of the virus. I would like to donate $10,000 tonight to go out to buy gift certificates from Ames restaurants, of which there's probably around 50. Likewise, I would like us to start a strong campaign to educate our citizens on wearing masks. The city should add to this fund to help pay for the education and for more gift certificates. I suggest the city puts $100,000 in the fund. I suggest ISU puts $100,000 as well. ISU needs Ames, just like Ames needs ISU. Likewise, other city organizations such as the Ames Chamber, the Ames Visitor Bureau, Mary Greeley Medical Center, McFarland Clinic, our financial institutions, other large business owners, churches, and other concerned citizens in this community should all give freely to help stop the spread and to keep our hospitality businesses alive. A quick obtainable goal of $500,000 or more is very realistic. And this type of community involvement is what our governor and state leaders mean when they say, trust the people of Iowa. Iowa has good people. Let's find a way to come together and be an example for other cities to follow that is positive and encouraging, not negative and punishing. I believe allowing our men and women in blue to distribute the gift certificates over the next several months so that citizens can get a free ice cream cone, a free pizza, or a free burger and fries would be appropriate at this time in the world when our police officers is so many times looked as negative versus positive. I respect and appreciate our law enforcement community, and instead of them having to be the bad guys, let's let them put a smile on someone's face after they are approached by an officer, because the officer is reinforcing positive behavior with an unexpected treat for them. I hope you will support this idea and jump on board to help get our community back to normal again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dixon.
The next speaker is Ernie Brown.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ernie.
Okay, thank you. Just two things. My name is Ernie Brown. I live at 1219 24th Street in Ames. And I just had a couple of questions. Number one, I can't see all of the council members, so I just assume that those videos have been muted. So I would assume everyone is still in attendance.
Correct.
And my second question is my second concern about the mandate would be this. Are we going to exempt houses of worship from this? I'm not going to give my opinion personally on mask or no mask mandate, but I do have a concern about houses of worship. So appreciate the council and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ernie.
The next speaker is Paige McGovern.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Paige McGovern and I live at 531 Crystal Street, your names. And yeah, first just want to say thank you. You know, it's a thankless job in so many ways and people have very passionate opinions. So just know that I'm thankful and appreciative to have lived here for the years that I have. Yeah, just first wanted to communicate my concern and disapproval of moving forward with the mask mandate. I think there are few reasons, but I think if I can capitalize on the few minutes, I kind of just wanted to piggyback on what was mentioned earlier from Tim and David of just wanting to ask the council to elaborate and to really explicitly describe the end goal for this mandate. I don't remember the specific date, so I'm sorry, but in the city council meeting, like not the last one, but the one before that, the kind of precedent and stage was set that you had three factors that you were looking at to identify if a mask mandate would be necessary or helpful for our city. And none of these factors were met, for example, like the ICU and hospitalization numbers, but you guys had continued to move forward regardless. And I think that that in itself is concerning that number then seemed arbitrary, but then I think it also requires that need to answer the question of what is the end goal? What numbers would you look at for when to remove the mask mandate? Is there a metric that you've identified? Was it hospitalizations? Is it COVID-specific deaths? No more virus? Is it when the vaccine is out? And I think that as a council, I would just really encourage you to identify those specifics, but also ask if you could communicate those to us as citizens to know what kind of the goal or what it is that you're looking for in that. Yes, again, thank you so much and really appreciative of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. And Brian, for you, I just want to make a comment is that there was a question made by someone regarding are all the council on, because all they see are some pictures. Apparently several council members are having some problems with internet tonight, and so they are trying to call in to get the audio, and they're still shown on the pictures. So it's one of the first times we've had this much problem, I think, with the internet issues, but that reason, that's why you're seeing some still images as well as an extra phone call or two showing up on the panelists. So,
John, do we still have everyone present for a quorum then?
Yes, I know that Gloria is on. She's on a phone with the last four digits, 512. Oh, Rachel's back. There she is. But if Rachel has to call in, I think that I did get a text from Rachel saying she's trying to get back on. She's having internet problems. So we will make sure that I think they're hearing. Rachel and Gloria, are you hearing the comments from the individuals? Okay, good. All right, Ryan, let's go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
The next speaker is SNCVB4.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Sasha Arson. I live at 3320 Weston Drive. Thank you all for your time. I am strongly against the mask mandate. I'm strongly against face coverings, masking. Anyone healthy, I feel we can protect those that we need to, like we've done many times before, and let the rest of us pass it around, build up our immune systems, and get over it. Herd immunity is real. If we're talking science, let's talk science. Let's talk about how the body works. In the beginning, I mean, we were looking at the deaths, the hospitalizations, all of that. They dropped how long ago? Why are we discussing this now? I mean, it's like, can we get the cart ahead of the horse? When looking at the science again, can someone please send me what you're seeing, what you're using to make these decisions? I've searched. I know how to read peer reviews. Not one exists to show that a face covering, a mask, prevents viral spread. What are we looking at? This must be shared, because the fear that is being pushed and the comments from a few in the medical field are being outweighed by the hundreds speaking up now that we have answers. We have answers. We have the hydrochloroquine, which is such a big word these days. We have, we have vitamin C, we have vitamin D, we have zinc. We have several things that people that take care of themselves use on a regular basis. I don't think I need to wear a mask because I'm not a sick person. I'm healthy. I do everything to keep myself and my family healthy. So who can tell us what we have to do with our bodies when we take pride in them? If someone's going to fast food restaurants every meal of the day, I'm sorry, but you're not taking pride in your immune system, in your health. And so why do I have to wear a mask? Because you're making poor choices. This just makes no sense. And when it comes to children, oh man, I have little ones, and I am not going to let this be normalized for my children. The social, emotional, and psychological damage. Who's looking at that? Who's looking at these kids that are not in school? I'm homeschooling this year, and I am not a homeschool parent. It was not my choice. And I am so upset about that. My babies should be in school, loving on their friends and teachers, because they need that. And they are not little germ spreaders. This has gone too far. I appreciate the passion people have, but when fear is the driving force, decisions are not made correctly. Sorry, I got a little passionate there myself. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And passion's okay.
The next speaker is Justin or Naomi Maines.
Hi, this is Naomi Maines. I live at 427 13th Street. I just again would like to thank the council for their time and consideration in all of this. And I just have a few points. A lot of my concerns have already been spoken, and so I do want to respect the time and anyone else that wants to share. I would like to emphasize that, I would like to know the metrics for when exactly are we going to say this is going to be done? When are we going to consider that it's safe? We don't have to make everyone wear a mask to protect everyone else. None of that has been stated. I know in previous council meetings that I've listened to, several citizens voiced concerns as well, wanting to know the science that you're making this decision off of and actually seeing it before our eyes. And I have yet to see that, and I would really, really appreciate being able to see that, to know. Because again, on all the research that I've done and that's been seen for the past 20 years has actually suggested that especially cloth masks tend to spread disease more. I was just speaking to a friend just this past weekend, and she's gone back to school, and she is 13 years old, probably 13 years old, and her comment was discussing about how much children are touching their masks and taking them off and on and off and on. If these masks are filled with this virus, as we are assuming, how is this not spreading it more? Because if adults have such a hard time not touching their mask, which every time I go out, I see this, and I'm sure you do too, how can we expect children not to? I have small children, and I too would like to know what research you have done in regards to the emotional, psychological, and even physical damage that this could possibly do, because there are no studies on it. I am also greatly concerned with the lack of religious exemption. I think that's one of the founding things that in America we take great pride in and thankfulness in, is the ability to worship how and the places that we please. And the lack of consideration in that is very concerning to me. I would like to emphasize everything that Paige and Lissa shared, and Sasha. I think those are all very good points, and they are not things that I've heard the council discuss, as well as some of the new CDC recommendations in stating that just because you've even been in contact with someone that has been or is possibly a carrier of COVID, they're now saying that you do not need to necessarily be tested unless you are showing symptoms. So are we just going to listen to some of the recommendations that fit our agenda? Or are we going to try to look at everything as a whole? Also, the New York Times just came out spreading light on a new study showing that they are concerned with the tests, that the tests are showing up too much, not the correct, they're showing evidence of someone being infected, but that person has such small traces of it in their system that they're not infecting, to the point of thousands and thousands of people that are testing positive that are not actually spreading the virus. So that, and many of them being asymptomatic. So if we're saying that asymptomatic people, which are seemingly healthy people, are the ones that are spreading, they're now saying that is not the case. Yes, if you are sick and you think you could be spreading the virus, I think it makes perfect sense, if you are not able to stay home, that you should wear a mask and avoid contact with people. I think that is a kind and respectful thing to do, and I think the majority of citizens in Ames have no problem with that. But to require other people who are healthy, to require a 3-year-old child who is healthy to wear a mask, to not be able to see people's faces, to see people's smiles, is wrong, and this is not acceptable. Thank you again for your time. We appreciate your thoughts and know that you're looking to protect people.
Thank you, Naomi.
Next speaker is Ashley Smith.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Smith, and I live at 4144 Eisenhower Lane. Thank you, Council, for holding this meeting, considering this motion, and also taking public input. I am for the mask mandate. I have seen some people taking this lightly and citing a low death rate as a reason for that. And I think it's very important that we notice that there is not a binary between living happily ever after or dying from COVID. There's a lot that we don't know. We're seeing evidence now that people who recover from COVID have permanent neurological and heart damage, and that will be with them for the rest of their lives. We simply do not know enough about the long-term effects of COVID-19 to take it lightly. I know that this has been considered previously and that there were some legal ramifications that prevented council from moving forward with the mandate. And to that, I just want to say that our federal government has failed us. Our state government has failed us. If our city government is not willing to move forward with something that will protect its citizens, there is no one left to protect us. And so I very much hope that we move forward with this. I would like to see a penalty because I don't think that people will comply just to comply. We have seen how people are treating workers in grocery stores where the grocery stores are requiring masks. We see them being assaulted. We see people pushing it just for the sake of stirring up commotion. And so I would like to see some kind of penalty, but I also do think that if it is a path of least resistance to do something with positive reinforcement, that is also something that would be helpful to have some kind of, consequence one way or another. But I think it's very important that we do lead by science. I know there have been a few people commenting on healthy people and healthy people that don't need to wear masks. That is exactly the issue. We don't know when you could be spreading this virus, so masks are needed at all time. And if everyone is not compliant, then it doesn't work. I also know that there has been a few comments about places of worship, and my personal opinion is that we should not have any exemptions. The virus does not care where you are at, especially if you are indoors, knowing that there is aerosolized spread. That is very dangerous, and then those people move into the community and spread it elsewhere. So my personal opinion is there should be no exemptions, and I would like to see stronger language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. It's been brought to my attention that people are raising their hands a second time, and I apologize for not making this count beforehand, but our policy is you have one opportunity to make comments. So if you have already addressed council, I would ask that you would please lower your hand, and if Brian admits someone who's already said something, I will ask him to, I'd ask you to refrain from making more comments. Okay, Brian, next person.
The next speaker is John Rosengren.
Good evening, Council. I wanted to thank you for taking your time to consider this issue. I want to first off say that I'm very much against this mask mandate. Excuse me. I live at 614 Hodge. My wife spoke earlier, but I'm on a separate line here. Yep. The things I want to point out is we keep talking about science, and we're doing this because of science, and it's been mentioned multiple times. The thresholds for triggering this have never been met. The thresholds for ending this have never been stated. If we're basing this on science, should there not be actual measurable thresholds or triggers for both actions? At this point, it just seems like we're acting out of fear, a panic to rush and get this ordinance in place as quickly as possible to deal with something we don't know about. But we've been dealing with this for 5 months. The statistics show that, yes, there are spikes, and yes, Ames may be having a higher percentage of positivity rate at the moment. The general trend is that this is on the downside. Using the provisions that we're doing now, masked or unmasked, the virus is declining. Death rates are declining. The rates of testing have changed because we are no longer testing people who are asymptomatic per CDC recommendations. So we are naturally going to have higher positivity rate because only the people tested are sick. There's going to be more people in the group of sick individuals with COVID than in the population as a whole. So I feel like even that trigger that we are a hotspot is an artificial statistic that should be a randomized statistic, not just simply testing a group of people who are sick to find out how many are sick with a particular disease. Again, I very much oppose the mask mandate in any form, and I thank you for the time to speak to you tonight.
Thank you, John.
The next speaker is Andrew Piltzer-Cowan.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Piltzer-Cowan. I grew up in Ames. I now live in Somerville, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. My parents still live in Ames, 2015 Clark Avenue, where I grew up. And I did not intend to speak at this meeting, but I have watched with alarm the rise in cases in Story County over the past days and weeks, as have many of my close friends who grew up in Ames and no longer live there. The prevailing sentiment among all of us last night when we read the news about the football game was, this is the first time we have ever been happy that we left Ames. I wanted to speak to share my experience living in the densest city in New England and the 16th densest in the country, where we have been under a mask mandate since April. And my view, having lived under that mask mandate for the past several months now, is that it is the smallest of the impositions upon our liberty that this pandemic has brought us. And it is, if anything, one that has allowed us to relax other impositions on our liberty, as well as having saved lives. I won't speak to the science. I know that the council has many other sources for that, but I think the anti-mask community blows the imposition so vastly out of proportion. I also wanted to share that here in Massachusetts, our mask mandates are enforceable under law by civil penalties ranging from $50 to $1,000, depending on the city or town, as well as in theory a criminal penalty of a misdemeanor with up to a year in jail under the Civil Defense Act. However, since April, the number of coercive enforcement actions of our mask mandate statewide have been in the tens. Our mask mandates have been enforced overwhelmingly, as yours is proposed to be done, by education and encouragement, and it has worked. Within a week after our mask mandate came out, I go cycling on our local rail trail almost every day, and I was counting how many people I passed were wearing masks. And almost overnight, when the mandate went into effect, it went from about 1 in 6 wearing masks to about 1 in 6 not wearing masks. So even without coercive enforcement, these ordinances can work. They do work. They are a truly minor imposition, and I urge the council to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
The next speaker is Vivian MC.
Hello, my name is Vivian Cook and I live at 2316 Aspen Road, Unit 102. And I would like to echo the comments of Cynthia Paschen, Vanessa Burnett, Ashley Smith, and others who have voiced support for an enforceable mask covering mandate. I would like to also acknowledge that this is a City of Ames meeting, and it is above all else the dangerous decisions of Iowa State University that have resulted in Ames' recent listing as the #1 worst COVID outbreak relative to population in the nation. However, ISU administration has also informed us in this community that they have been in close conversation with the City of Ames in making these decisions, and the university is not self-contained and its actions will affect this community as a whole and is already doing so. I would urge council to apply pressure to the university to discourage in-person gatherings of any kind. For those with any amount of global awareness, it is more than clear that the actions of this nation, Iowa, and ISU are disregarding scientific evidence and the lives of those in our communities. We have far exceeded the thresholds at which other communities that have slowed the spread have deemed it necessary to take actions such as mandating face coverings, and we are disregarding federal public health guidelines. Please change that narrative and do everything you can, including passing a face covering mandate, to mitigate the spread. Thank you all so much for your time and for your care.
Yeah.
The next speaker is Brooke.
Hi, actually, this is Brooke's husband, Reed. Reed Kruger. I live at 1160 Oklahoma Drive. And I'm a small business owner. I our business has been around since 1981, 1982. And I mean, I'm really concerned over the lack of consequences behind this ordinance, whether it's positive or negative. I love the idea of the gift certificates. I would love to chip in some money towards that myself. But in my own shop, when people come in, we have signs up that ask them to wear masks, and it is a daily battle with some of these people that have to put on masks. Even though it is our shop, these same people that tout individual liberties don't even respect other people's individual liberties to run their own businesses how they want. You have people, young kids, getting berated in front of Targets and Hy-Vee and Walmart because they're trying to enforce their store's policy. It's ridiculous. It's hypocritical of these people to fight for everybody's liberty, but their own. But that being said, people that are set against it are still not going to wear masks. I can get that, fine. But here's the deal. I personally cannot get sick. As I said, I am a small business owner. If I get sick, my one employee and I have to close down. And that will hit me financially really, really hard, obviously. But we're also a critical and essential business and service in this town. And people won't be able to get that service. On a personal level, my wife has a brain tumor, and I can't bring this home. She's at high risk. My family has been keeping social distance, and they've been basically sequestering themselves in our house since March, hoping that this will go away, that other people will help out and do the right thing and care for other people, get this taken care of. And it hasn't happened. It just hasn't. It's been 5 months. The science is out there. Everybody knows what's going to happen. And we're sick of it. I'm sick of going to work scared out of my mind. I'm sick of seeing my kids, missing their friends. I want it to be over with just as much as the next person. So I would really like the council to consider some kind of consequence one way or the other for helping enforce this mandate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Leanne Wilson.
Good evening. As you are, I'm sure aware, I've been writing emails, but I would just like to make a couple of points that I think would fit in with the general discussion. First of all, thank you.
Could you state your address, please?
5326 Springbrook Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for holding this special meeting, because this is not a decision that can be delayed. The prevalence of active cases in Ames was coming down until mid-August, but now it's rising rapidly, and this is due to spread inside Ames. Doubling time in total cases since January is now just under 13 days, meaning if we do no change in what we're doing, then about 2,500 more cases will be identified in Story County in the next 2 weeks. A doubling time less than 30 days is considered out of control, and this is one measure that's less sensitive to uncertainties in testing that we've been hearing a lot about. The lag between new cases and hospitalized cases is about 10 days, so we're now already committed to a rise in hospital cases. But if we can change the slope now, we can avoid much worse rise to follow. I love the idea of rewards for wearing masks, and I urge you to pass this in whatever form you can agree on as soon as you possibly can, so that we can avoid really bad situation. To delay by 2 weeks in this is like delaying 2 hours in trying to put out a fire. We need action now. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.
The next speaker is Bunting.
Hello. So sorry for the child in the background. My name is Rebecca Bunting. I live at 5247 Harvest Road.
Thank you.
I have sent emails since March to the city council, and I appreciate those of you that have emailed back and had dialogue. I do echo that these are challenging times and definitely grounds to
have lots of opportunities to discuss. I do want to just state at the beginning here that I am against a mask mandate in any form, enforceable with a fine or not. I think it's important for everyone who is talking about statistics and science to also state where they're getting their science from, where they're getting their statistics from. I work in pharmaceutical clinical trial drug development and management, specifically for a fatty liver disease trial where we see morbidly obese patients on a global level, but many sites here in the United States. I can tell you, I look at safety profiles, I manage 23,000 patients, and I have only seen 6 cases of COVID. Those 6 patients have recovered, and they were given hydroxychloroquine or vitamin C intravenously. They were not removed from their clinical trial. So that's pretty significant for those that think that there are very untoward ongoing medical consequences for contracting COVID. They've been able to continue on their study. So I just want to help us maybe reframe the discussion around COVID. We are operating and making decisions out of fear. And I think that we need to look at the data that shows us maybe we need to step away from that side and move forward in confidence. So currently in Story County, to date, we've had roughly 2,400 positive cases out of 100,000 residents. That's a 2.4% positivity rate. We also know that the test can have false positives up to 60% of the time. So statistically, that's an insignificant number. Not saying that it's insignificant if someone were to contract COVID and to be severely ill and to even die. I'm not saying that that is insignificant, but what I am saying is we're making a lot of economic decisions. We're making a lot of decisions regarding individual liberties based on 2.4% of our population having a positive test. That doesn't even mean that they are symptomatic, doesn't even mean that they're in the hospital. Currently, I think we have 2 patients maybe here in Story County that have been hospitalized, 2. And we don't even know if they were hospitalized for a different pre-existing condition. So we're looking at numbers. Currently, the numbers don't show that this is a crazy increase in cases. The media is going to want you to think that. The media is going to want to keep you in a place of fear. I think we need to start acting based in confidence of what we do know. Looking at the COVID View website is a great resource for people. I look at that daily. I print it out. I highlight. I look at trends. I have to do this for my work, and I also do it for my family. I have not been afraid of this virus since March when it came down to us. It's not something that we need to be bent out of shape about. Other people have offered great suggestions of things that we can do. Gift cards. Those are all wonderful ideas instead of enforcing a mask mandate. But I think still the premise is that we would be encouraging fear and making decisions in fear rather than confidence. So that is what I have to say. Please do consider just the consequences to our children, our families, our churches, our small businesses. You hear from the individual who has a small business that is not pleased with people that come into his store without a mask. We do need to respect, and that means that I won't give you my business then if I can't come into your store. Same with Wheatsfield. I don't give my business to Wheatsfield any longer because I'm not welcome in their store, along with other individuals with disabilities. So I will stop now, but I thank you for your time. I appreciate all of you and the discussions that we've had.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Next person to speak is Jonas Michael.
Hi, can you hear me?
Jonas, thank you.
All right, so good evening to the council. My name is Jonas Michael, and I reside at 3001 Heathrow Drive. So first and foremost, thank you for your service. It's certainly a difficult time to be a leader in our country. At this time, whether it's at the local, county, state, or national level, I myself serve as a leader in our school system, and I understand that the decisions in front of you is very difficult. This is the first time I've ever spoken at a public forum, and the reason for it is because I'm shocked to hear that people are so passionate about not wearing masks. The science is clear. wearing masks helps to slow down the spread of coronavirus. I keep hearing people make statements about reacting out of fear. You know what? I am fearful. I'm fearful that the lack of responsibility as a community will keep myself safe and our neighbors safe. I'm fearful that I will succumb to my underlying health condition if I contract this virus. Folks, we're talking about wearing a mask to keep people healthy and alive. So from an economics perspective, I did hear the last person talk about how they're not going to shop at certain places because they require a face mask. I want to be very clear. Those are the places that I do shop at to support because I feel okay and comfortable and safe spending my money there. From an economics perspective, I've now turned to buying most of my stuff on Amazon because I'm too worried to enter a business because I'm afraid to be exposed to this virus. There are so many reasons why we need to enforce this mask mandate, but the reality is the science is clear. Our community is not healthy. The number of our positivity rates continues to go up. And if we want to return to business as usual, we have to do our part now. The reality is I lack faith in people using some of the common sense that science has put out there. So for no other reason than I encourage this council to vote yes to support a mask mandate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ron.
Next speaker is John or Chelsea Carter, sorry. Just a moment.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, my name is John Carter. My wife Chelsea Carter is here with me. We live at 619 Duff Avenue. So I emailed the council members earlier this evening, and I want to share parts of this email, but I also want to speak to some of the things that other community members have said. So like I said, my name is John Carter. I moved to Ames around a year ago. I moved here from East Central Indiana. I'm a graduate student at Iowa State. And I was really apprehensive about moving here because prior to this, I'd lived in the country on my parents' farm, and I'm not really one who wanted to live in a city. But I came here for graduate school, and I thought, well, I'll make the best of it. And what I found was that I actually really love being in Ames, and I found a home here that I really didn't expect to find. I live just off of downtown. Being able to go to local businesses was great. The thing that has shocked me the most this evening is the disregard that some of my community members seem to have for other members of our community. I've been hearing a lot of talk about individual liberties, and I think that the challenging thing is that individual liberties stop where I can begin being harmed. And I'm frankly surprised at how the lengths people will go to refuse to wear a mask on their face. I encourage the council to not only have a mask mandate, but to have one with teeth. This is a community that I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be a part of. And it truly makes me sad to see so many of my fellow community members seem to not care about the impact of this on other people's lives and how this is going to harm and kill people. And also I'm hearing a lot of talk about psychological trauma to children about wearing masks. I think the psychological trauma we should be more afraid of is when kids are going to have to see friends, family, community members getting sick, dying, or having potential life-long illness issues. Thanks for your time. And again, I'm happy to be here, but it is disheartening.
Thank you, John.
Next speaker is Sarah Carney.
Hello, Sarah. Sarah, you need to unmute yourself. There you go. Sarah, we're not hearing anything. Okay, Brian, let's put her in the queue and then we'll move on. Then we'll come back and try and pick her up. Sarah, we'll come back to you. We're just not hearing anything from you.
The next speaker is Siba Fahim.
Hello.
Hi. So yes, my name is Seba Fahim. I live at 1930 Long Road. I'm in favor of a mask mandate. We've heard this from a lot of different people, so I'll keep this fairly short. I want to make sure that in this discussion that we're not losing sight of the overall goal, what we're talking about here, why we're here. We're here to save people's lives. The CDC has said that masks will prevent the spread of the virus. The CDC is the best scientific organization in our land. We should be listening to them. And so, while this is a novel coronavirus or things that we may not know fully, I understand that masks have been proven to reduce the spread of the virus because it creates a barrier from your mouth to everyone else. And so if you're carrying the virus and you have the virus in your droplets, you're less likely to spread it to everyone else because there's that barrier there. And so I want to make sure that we remember that having everybody wear a mask will reduce the spread of the virus overall. It's a simple ask. We're not asking for a lot here. It's just a piece of cloth over your mouth. It's easy. It's something that we should have had implemented months ago, but we're still talking about it now. And we need to make sure if we're implementing it that we actually put some enforcement behind it. Because if we just say that there's a mandate out here, but do it if you want, no one's going to do it. We need to make sure that there's an actual penalty assigned to not having a mask on. It makes us safer as a community. It, as many people have said, it will help businesses because people will be feeling safer to go into businesses. It's just an important thing to do. And I hope that you all make the right decision here, make the decision to keep us safe because we elected you. We elected you to serve us. And right now we need your help to keep us safe. We should have had the governor do this. We should have had the president put this out. But unfortunately, those two people who are also sworn to protect us have failed us. And it's on your shoulders now to make sure that we can live safe lives. And so I want to make sure that you protect us. And I don't understand most of the people who are on here saying that they don't want a mask mandate for various reasons. To me, it's a no-brainer. It will protect people's lives. And that is greater than anything else. Any lawsuit, any personal liberties, anything. It is the lives of our community members, our neighbors, our friends. All of their lives are at stake, and we need to make sure that we are protecting them. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Tim Sklenar.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Tim.
Lovely. I live at 320 South 2nd Street. I just wanted to reiterate what a lot of other people have said and voice my support for a mandate with teeth. I will say that I am a person who has asthma, so I am at risk for severe COVID-19 symptoms. I live in this community, and I still see lots of people ignoring the simplest thing that they can do. I would also like to say that we don't have a personal liberty right to drink and drive because it endangers other people's lives in our community. And I don't fear it because we have rules against it with penalties. Therefore, the same thing should apply to a mask mandate. It worked in the influenza outbreak in 1918. There's historical evidence of a anti-mask movement and a second spike in the San Francisco metro. And then when they added penalties, things got back under control. I really think as a community, I would like to be able to go out and not be fearful that other people are going to be selfish and potentially kill me. I would also add that I have been religiously wearing a mask since February. I have a respiratory problem. It hasn't affected me negatively, physically, health-wise at all. So that argument is nonsense. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
The next speaker is Lena Menifree-Cook.
Hello, my name is Lena Menifee-Cook. I live at 3105 Bayberry Road. And I would just like to agree with and echo the sentiments of the others who have supported the need for an enforceable mask mandate. I am deeply concerned about how many of my friends, family members, teachers, students, and other Ames community members are going to get COVID-19 and could possibly die, partially because of a lack of community-oriented safety measures. I ask the council to please work towards protecting the people of Ames with an enforceable mandate. Thank you.
Lena.
The next speaker is Luke.
Hey friends, how are you? This is Luke Grant. I am a business owner in Story County, and last week...
I'm sorry, is it Grant, is that right?
Grant, G-R-A-N.
Okay, and your address, please, Luke?
I live in Story County, southeast of Nevada, 65584 260th Street.
Thank you.
But I'm calling today because I employ people who live in Ames, and one of our employees last week came to work on a Monday afternoon, and I rode in a vehicle with him with our company-wide mask mandate. So all of us were wearing masks. I spent an hour in a vehicle with this person who 2 days later found out his roommate was infected. And for a week, I've been terrified that I got infected. But I'm here to say that I have had 2 tests and I'm negative, and masking works. I rode in a car with someone who was potentially transmitting the virus. We all had masks on, 3 employees in a vehicle. One person is at home for 2 weeks with terrible symptoms of the virus. 2 people that rode with him, including myself, are healthy and free of the virus. So I just wanted to say that this is a very important thing. We have to mandate masks in public and inside spaces, and we need to have teeth with it so people will do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke.
The next speaker is Brandy.
Randy, can you unmute yourself? Click there. Can you unmute? There you go. Can't hear you, Brandy. Okay, I'll come back to Brandy. Anybody else, Brian?
Yes, the next speaker is Aditya Ramamurthy.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Aditya Ramamurthy, and I reside at 2634 Somerset Drive. So I would like to say that I strongly support the mask mandate with teeth, and I have heard from a number of people earlier on this call, but I do want to say 2 things here. The first thing is that somebody mentioned about the positivity rate being very low. So we have 2,400 people out of about 100,000 in our county. But we need to remember that this is in the phase of what is called exponential growth. Just because it's growing only a few hundreds per day right now does not mean it's going to continue like this. Exponential growth can be very, very overwhelming. And this is something that I know as an academic. So I think we need to be very, very careful. And having a mask mandate is not something that is extremely infringing on people's rights. As many people have made the point, if my wearing a mask is helping somebody else not get sick and somebody with potentially asthma not die, I think I should be doing it. And I should be doing it just like I should not be driving drunk. And The third thing I would like to point out is that we are in a situation of a pandemic. We need to learn from what other countries around the world have done. There is a country, Singapore, which has about 5.7 million people, and they've had a total of under 50,000 or maybe under 60,000 COVID cases in total. And it has been because of extreme discipline of the people in wearing masks and strong contact tracing. While we cannot maybe think about doing contact tracing at that level, we certainly can wear masks. It is the evidence, the scientific evidence clearly shows that it helps. So I'm all for it. This is an extremely welcoming community. I've been living here for about 14, 15 years now. And I moved here from California, and before that, I moved here from India. I have nothing but good things to say about the Ames community as a whole. But in this one aspect, I am saying I'm disappointed, but I think we are better than this. We can pull together and have a mask mandate that helps everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Serena Paulson.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena Paulson. My address is 3213 West Street. I just want to thank, again, I've been watching the meetings for the past few weeks, Amber, Bronwyn, and Rachel for really stepping up and trying to fight for a mask mandate with teeth. I have listened to some of these arguments, and my level of disappointment for Ames citizens raises every day. Considering some of these arguments are, I'm healthy, my kids are healthy, we should be expecting more. We should be protecting others. You sound like Nazis when you say that. It sounds like you believe in eugenics and that you aren't taking every method and measure to protect others. By saying that, you sound like a Nazi and you sound like you believe in eugenics. Saying that people with underlying conditions don't deserve to be protected is mind-boggling to me. If I can save one life by wearing a mask, I should do so, and that should be it, point blank, period. If I can save my neighbors just by wearing a piece of cloth over my mouth and my nose, let's do it. Sign me up. Your right to freedom by not wearing a mask does not supersede my right to live. The long-term health consequences of this virus are still being discovered. People are having strokes, people are having memory issues, people are having facial recognition issues. Why are we not taking that more seriously? Even if you are asymptomatic, even if you get it and you overcome the disease. An enforceable mandate would save lives. That's what it would do. Putting one in without teeth does nothing. It is comparable to what we've been doing now. It's comparable to what the state has been doing now. It has shown to do nothing. Iowa State has put in rules and policies and procedures to protect students, and because until they started putting in fines, no one was following these rules. People are walking across campus without masks on because no one was calling them out for it. We need an enforceable mask mandate, and we need it now. People are dying. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Matt or Kylie Waite.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Kylie.
Sure, thank you. We live at 4231 Cartier Avenue. Thank you so much for your service to our great city of Ames. My husband and I continue to stand in opposition to the mask ordinance. If we are going to recommend masks, we do need to understand whether they're helpful or not. I'd like to draw your attention to the following CDC article about the effectiveness of cloth masks. It's called Effectiveness of Cloth Masks for Protecting Against Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. I will just read a few sentences of the abstract. The use of cloth masks during the COVID-19 pandemic is under debate. The filtration effectiveness of cloth masks is generally lower than that of medical masks and respirators. However, cloth masks may provide some protection if well designed and used correctly. Multi-layer cloth masks designed to fit around the face and made of water-resistant fabric with a high number of threads and finer weave may provide reasonable protection. My conclusion after reading this report is that there is not enough clear evidence to support the mandating of mask wearing in the city of Ames. You will notice that the findings are that cloth masks might provide some protection to the general public if they are not only used correctly, but made of the correct water-resistant material, and goes on to say 2 or 3 layers with batting in between the layers. The article states that cloth masks may give users a false sense of protection because of their limited protection against acquiring infection. Furthermore, per the CDC report as referenced, it says that only one randomized controlled study has been done to determine the efficacy of cloth masks. In this study, it was found that, and this study is linked in the report, the risk for infection was higher for those wearing cloth masks. It goes on to say that the poor performance may have been because the masks were not washed frequently enough or because they became moist and contaminated. This being said, I think you can probably all agree with me when I say that citizens of Ames do not wear masks correctly. If you've been to any public place recently, you will notice people touching and adjusting their masks repeatedly. Once a mask is touched by the wearer, it is contaminated. People shove them in pockets, or if you're like me, your purse. They do not wash them, ever, much less after each use. In fact, the CDC has a separate page linked in the report that I mentioned, describing exactly how to put on and take off a mask. It says, do not touch the outer layer of face mask during use. One more thing it says that I find noteworthy is taking a mask off is a high risk process because pathogens may be present on the outer surface of the mask and may result in self-contamination during removal. As I wrap up, most importantly here, if a 35-year-old adult cannot wear a cloth mask correctly, do you really think, honestly, that a 3-year-old or a 10-year-old can? It's unfortunate that the city council wants to bring children under this ordinance knowing full well they cannot wear masks correctly. At the minimum, I strongly urge you to reconsider including children 10 and under in your ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Juliana.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. My name is Juliana Starling, and I moved here, 10 years ago from another country. It seems like there's another man on here as well. I was originally born in a communist country, and to think that I see the U.S. pushing not only at a countrywide scale, but one even at our local level is shocking to me. I went to college in Canada and I graduated with my degree in health information management. I sent an email out early this morning. I spent all night finishing my research, and I sent it to Tim, and I sent it, I think, to you as well, Mr. Mayor. And I think the biggest thing out of all of it is that people are living in fear because of confusion and panic on either side. And as a result, there's a lot of tension there. But when you come down to actually look at the science the government has provided, it is very clear. There's no true randomized controlled study to prove any effectiveness on masks. And I know my email was long and I apologize, and maybe you haven't even read it yet. But I think the biggest thing is that the CDC has even issued a statement saying, and we've already heard this from the lady previous to me, that research indicates that masks may be helpful to those who are infected, but there's less information regarding whether masks offer any protection to those exposed to anyone symptomatic or asymptomatic. Therefore, the determination of close contact should be made irrespective of whether the person with COVID or the contact was wearing a mask. Because the general public has not received proper training or selection or in use of PPE, it cannot be certain whether born during contact with an infected individual will offer them any protection from exposure. Beyond that, this virus is spread by droplets. In other words, it can come from any bodily fluid that the body excretes. I go on to explain that in my email to you, that it's not just from your nose and from your mouth. It also includes your urine, your feces, your earwax, your blood. There has been studies found where sewage was tested and the urine and feces, it was positive with this virus. We also know that the tests have been contaminated since April, a month into this mess. The other days, the whole team of the Chicago Bears, it came out that their tests weren't accurate. Regarding the tests, I don't know that testing is what we should be looking at. The number of deaths is most important. That is the one number that can't be falsified. It's the one number that proves what the impact is on any virus, any bacteria, any health disease. We also know that that is decreasing, not only in the country, according to the CDC, but also in our own state. Some have talked about herd immunity and all those things, and I agree with pretty much all of that. But I think out of everything, just to quickly wrap up here, I think the biggest point that I want to make is this quote from Benjamin Franklin that says that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety. Your job, while there is some limit on that to protect us, your job is to make sure that there's order in our city. Our own job as a citizen is to protect ourselves, to take care of ourselves. And I have kids that were born in Ames. Like I said, I've lived here 10 years. My husband's from here. And one of my kids is under 3, and my other kid is over 3. We chose to homeschool this year, not because we're scared of a virus, but we're scared of the emotional and physical and mental impact it is going to have on them, because this doesn't affect them. When it comes to even asymptomatic carriers, it's been clearly noted that in scientific studies that it is very rare, even by the WHO, that they even spread. So when you think about this, it's not just the oral nasal passages that, yeah.
I've already allowed you over a minute and a half.
I'm sorry.
Please, bring your comments to a close, please.
Sure. Long story short, there is so much we don't know, and mask wearing on everybody is really just an experiment on the American people, because there's nothing to prove that they truly work on the majority of population. And so I don't think that this is the right decision for not only the city, but for the country. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jennifer Hill.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, last week I couldn't figure out how to get my phone unmuted, but
I'm glad you're in this week.
Jennifer Hill, and I live at 3807 Columbine Avenue. So I've been listening to all of the reports since this all began, and all sides of it, for and against. I try to have an open mind, but at the same time, we all come to this forum with our own personal experience. My husband was actually in China, January 2nd through January 12th. He came home. He was 50 miles from Wuhan. We didn't get sick. We had some bad colds and the flu. So we kind of had that personal experience there. But that being said, he's got type 2 diabetes. I have a daughter that's got type 1 diabetes. I have asthma and other Lyme conditions, and we have been mask-free this whole time for our own family's personal decision, not because we don't care about society. It's the decision we've made. One of the decisions we made was, for me personally, when I was 19, I was raped, and part of that was my mouth being covered for a long time. And every time I put a mask on, I almost relive it. It is very traumatic for me. So when I hear people saying it's so selfish of people who don't want to wear them, do we know every footprint someone has walked in? Do we know the steps they've gone through to get to that point where they said, I can't do this? It's not because I'm a selfish person or my family doesn't care, because we love people. God has taught us we're supposed to love everyone. And we're not perfect, but we try. But I want you to know, I work at this school, so I put the mask on and I go through that because I love these kids and I want them to get educated. And I want them to feel the connection of personal teaching. But we are all struggling with this. So please be aware that it's not people wearing their masks isn't just because maybe someone is. I mean, there's jerks out there. Someone's being selfish, whatever. But there are some reasons that go deeper than that. And so please be open to hearing that too. You know, I've had family and that have been in the military and they have fought, lost limbs. I had an uncle who lost his arm, and he was in the Senate for veterans who were wounded for years. He served his life to protect our freedoms. And one of them is for us to be able to make that choice. I also feel it's very important for us to be in charge of ourselves. I make sure the best I can that my children are behaving. I make sure they know the rules, and there's going to be consequences. And first and foremost, it's going to happen here at home. I want them to be good citizens. And I don't rely on you as a counsel to tell my kids how to be good citizens, because that's my job as a parent. I want to be good at that. So I want you to know, I don't feel, and I don't think society as a whole should feel, that your job is to tell us how to do this and how to raise our families and how to be good citizens. We have boundaries and we have rules and regulations that you help us write. But we as a society also have voted for this system where you guys are in there helping us. Maybe I appreciate the fact that you guys spend endless hours helping our community. And it is a lot of times unappreciated, and we have no idea all that you do. But please hear the people on both sides of this before you make this decision. Because whether it's a mandate for or against, I really feel that you need to not just think it's just about this number or that number. These are people's feelings and emotions, and there's background to this. So I'll let the scientists and all them talk to you about that stuff. That's not my background. But personally, I've got a family that's highly, what they say is susceptible, and we have been living mask-free and been safe. And like I said, my husband was there, came back. We've all been fine. So that's where I come from. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Next speaker is Sarah Carney.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now we can, Sarah.
Okay, thank you for your patience. So my name is Sarah Carney. I live at 320 South 2nd Street. I support an equitably enforceable mask mandate in Ames. There is a scientific consensus on the effectiveness of cloth face coverings in controlling the community spread of the virus. The sooner we come together as a community and wear masks, the more lives and livelihoods can be saved. A mask mandate will improve freedom of movement and safety around town for all of us. Taking measured precautions against the spread of a pandemic to protect our most vulnerable neighbors is not necessarily an act of fear, but an act of love. Please pass the mask mandate. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Brian, is Randy able to get back on? She was not able to get unmuted last time.
We will give it a try. Brandy?
Can you hear me?
Now we can, Randy.
Awesome, thank you. I wasn't prepared to speak because I don't live in Ames, I live in Story County, but when I heard you allow the gentleman from Massachusetts, I did want to jump on and speak on behalf of my daughter who lives at 905 Dickinson Avenue in Ames. She is a 21-year-old college student in Ames. We were speaking this afternoon about this meeting, and she gave me specific examples of 6 of her friends who are not doing well mentally or emotionally. The CDC has recently released a study that shows that 25% of adults aged 18 to 24 have considered suicide in the last 30 days. Excuse me. There is a point 0.05% chance of dying from COVID, and 90% of those that do die of COVID are of an advanced age. The average age of dying from COVID is 78, which coincidentally is also the average lifespan in the United States. Our children are not doing well. Sorry. Like I said, I wasn't prepared for this. If we can make a mask mandate, but what is going to happen is a week after the masks come off, there's going to be another spike in positive cases. The nature of a virus is that it mutates to become less deadly, but to spread faster. A virus wants its host to be alive. We have thousands of viruses in our bodies every day of the week, all of us on this call. If you test for something, you will find it. The masks are very dehumanizing to our children, especially. Everyone speaking on this call is an adult and can handle it differently than our children, but our children and our young adults, our college-age students, those that are aged 18 to 24 that were in that CDC study, they are not doing well. It's dehumanizing, and especially when you combine it with the mandate that they cannot gather in groups of more than 10. This is extremely harmful to our children, and we need to keep in mind that we are all responsible for our own health, and that includes our mental health. Thank you.
Randy, before you go, I just want to ask a clarification. You said that adults or these kids contemplating suicide within the last 30 days. Is that, I think maybe, understand that you got emotional. Was that because of the masks, wearing masks, or can you clarify that please for us?
That's just specifically to the times that we're in with the pandemic. Everything that our young children are being faced with, whether that's they can't gather in groups, they can't go to college as they expected, the mask, every aspect of their life has been changed. And the masks are a large part of that because they are dehumanizing.
Okay, and I presume that you're against the mask mandate.
I'm 100% against, thank you.
And your last name, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
How?
Howe?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, right.
The next speaker is April Finley.
Hello, everyone. My name is April Finley, and I live at 4701 Todd Drive, unit number 205. I am originally from the South, from Alabama, and the first thing that I heard when my husband and I moved here about a year ago was about Iowa Nice and how people here are just some of the nicest people. And luckily, I've been able to find that in a lot of the people that we've met and encountered, and it reminds me a lot of home. Now, with that statement, truly, to me, what Iowa Nice has been interpreted to mean is that you do what it takes to protect fellow Iowa citizens. I am your neighbor. My husband is your neighbor. We both, like Tim and a couple of other callers, are asthmatic, pre-diabetic, and recently diagnosed with diabetes type 2. We are a part of this community, just as other Iowa citizens are, and strongly in favor of the mask mandate. Having a mask mandate is not living in fear. It's living in safety. For instance, I am a part of services at my church where I sing during services throughout the week. That is the only time that I do not wear a mask because I have to speak into a microphone. And as soon as I am off performing for the morning, my mask is on. We have a high rate here in Ames, but we also have the opportunity to correct ourselves and be an example for the rest of the country to follow. Yes, it's a little bit overdue, but let's be that example of how we can correct ourselves through dynamic leadership. This rule can be dynamic. It can change and be adaptable as the conditions of COVID and all of the circumstances change. That is definitely something that is possible. For instance, in my home state of Alabama, they implemented a mask mandate that has a rolling deadline so that as cases go down, or as things continue to develop, the mandate can be either extended or it can be lifted. That has dramatically taken down the amount of cases in the entire state of Alabama. So we have things and examples to show that mask mandates do work. Let's bring the news back for a positive reason. I implore you all to take similar action for the safety of all Ames citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, April.
Next speaker is Andrew Mazurek.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
My name is Andrew Mazurek. I live at 3306 Preston Circle. I would like to say that I do support the wearing of masks. However, I do not support a mask mandate, and I strongly am opposed to a mask mandate with teeth. I feel that that can provide some unintended consequences, including, but not limited to, shaming and having and reporting and having difficulty kind of sharing their experiences with their physicians. If a patient has had exposure and they're going to the primary care provider and there's a mask mandate in place with teeth, I think that those patients are unlikely to be honest with the physicians about where they've been and if they have been wearing a mask or not. This is obviously a very polarizing issue, as you've known. And I think putting the force of law behind this would empower both sides to, like I said, some unintended consequences. We've all seen these videos on the internet where people pepper spray other people or yell at other people because they're not wearing a mask. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is a real danger to public health. I am a frontline healthcare worker. I have worked with COVID positive patients. And there are people that are going to be sick from this. Unfortunately, we should protect our most vulnerable people. And as many people have said on here, those vulnerable people are people that are over age 60 with pre-existing health conditions. Those people should be wearing masks, and we should be wearing masks around those people. Like I said, I do support the wearing of masks. However, I do not support the use or the implementation of a mask mandate, and I strongly oppose a mask mandate with teeth. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jennifer Flugie.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Flugie. I live at 1304 Alberta. I'll make this short and sweet. I just want to say that I strongly support the mask mandate. I actually had COVID back in May, and I do have some lingering issues from it. I was out in the community when I was positive and infected, and if I hadn't been wearing my mask, I would have spread it to others. I can sleep at night because I know that I was wearing my mask and I kept people safe. I will continue to wear my mask because we just don't know. Can I get it again? Can I be infectious again? There's too much at stake to chance it. So I think it's the very least that we can do for our community. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Katie Benz.
Hello.
Hello, Katie.
Hi. I live at 2147 160th Street. Thank you guys for taking my call. I know that a lot of people have come to you with science and different reasons, but I would like you to think of the people beyond COVID. The people that have huge anxiety attacks every time they put on a mask. the people that can't wear them because it just sends them into a full-on meltdown. They have Asperger's, they have autism, they have all these other conditions that you can't see and other people can't see when you're not wearing your mask. They would be my older two sons. They both have Asperger's. They can't wear a mask. And if you see them in public, you won't know that they have Asperger's. You won't know that it will send them into orbit, that they will start clawing at everything and throwing themselves on the floor. You can't see that it causes them physical pain to be restricted that way. But if you make them wear a mask, they can't function. My 19-year-old has a job. He works at Wilson's. He tries to wear his mask as much as he can. But if you restrict him on that, and then you give this mandate with teeth, he's going to be, people are going to see him and they're going to not understand. And then it's going to restrict him. And there are many other people in this city and in our county that have other underlying conditions that you can't see and you don't know why they're not wearing a mask. And it's actually against HIPAA to ask them to wear a mask. You can't do that to people. They're trying their hardest and they're washing their hands and they're using hand sanitizer and they're social distancing as best they can, but they still have to be able to work and to be able to be around people without restrictions. And another thing, I have littler kids and I know this sounds silly, but bad guys wear masks on every TV show and every cartoon they've ever watched. It's conditioned into them. You can't take that and just say, oh, well, now the people that wear masks are good. It's okay to wear masks now. You can tell them that, but they've been conditioned for years that bad guys wear masks. And you can look and you can see that there's obviously problems with little children who are being kidnapped. You can put a piece of duct tape over the top of their mouth and put a mask on, and you can lead them out, and people think that they're just being a naughty kid and they're being taken outside. But you don't know because they can't hear them, what they're saying, because they have a mask on and nobody knows that they're actually being kidnapped. These are real problems that we need to think through before you try to put masks on children or even adults that have underlying conditions. So I ask you to take that into consideration, please. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dan Bell.
Hello, and thank you for having me on again. I appreciate the hard work that you put into this. My name is Dan Bell. I'm at 419 18th Street in Ames, and I have a list of things that I was hoping to at least expand on some of them, but after hearing some of the previous callers, they just don't seem that important anymore. One of the previous callers mentioned a horrific personal experience, and that reminds me that what we really need to focus on is compassion. She said, "But I wear one anyway." But I also believe there is a compassionate response to the previous caller as well. I don't know what it is, but I don't believe that it involves allowing some people to go in public without a mask and additional guidelines such as one family member per store and so forth. I don't think that's the answer. I don't know what the answer is. But if the Ames community, which I believe has got to be one of the most educated and worldly communities anywhere, if we can't figure this out, who can? Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you, Dan.
The next speaker is Jeremy.
Yes, my name is Jeremy Knutson, and I live at 2117 Stevenson Drive. I just want to bring up a little bit more of the effectiveness of cloth masks for protection against severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus. We had several people quote that study earlier. However, they failed to leave off the part that says, until a cloth mask design is proven to be equally effective as a medical or N95 mask, wearing cloth masks should not be mandated for healthcare workers. In community settings, however, cloth masks may be used to prevent community spread of infections by sick or asymptomatically infected persons, and the public should be educated about their correct use. So if you choose as a council to implement a citywide mask mandate, I would also encourage that you engage in education of our community as a part of that. And I want to just leave you with one more statistic, and that is the number 16, which is the number of Story County residents that have been deceased, died because of contracting the coronavirus in our county. Thank you.
Jeremy, before you leave, you say you encourage educating our community. Would you educate our community on what specifically?
Specifically, the proper wearing of masks, what masks, cloth masks are more effective. There are different materials that are more effective than others, and statistics have shown that there are certain types of materials and thread counts and those sorts of things that will help to greatly reduce the spread over other materials.
Very good. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dan Marks.
Hello, I'm Dan Marks. I live at 2307 Timberland Road.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you doing? I've written the city council several times since early July, asking for this mandate to happen to keep Iowa from becoming another New York, Florida, California, Arizona, or Texas. Now Iowa's ranked with the third highest positive COVID cases in the world and first in the U.S. Had a mask mandate been put in place before ISU opened, there would likely not been concerns of shutting the university down and or sending students home early. Bars would have not been shut down for a second time, and most people would be more comfortable about going to businesses knowing a mandate was in place for all businesses. The Story County Board of Health is going to vote on mandating masks with a fine. Now, I feel our city's mandate should include a fine as well. This is the only way to get people who won't wear a mask to do the right thing. Science proves that if everyone wore a mask, the virus would have a difficult time spreading. The CDC, the IDPH, WHO, the Story County Board of Health, and nearly every epidemiologist, scientist, and virologist agree that masks work. When Ames has a mask mandate, it will help the university succeed, and Ames relies strongly on the university to succeed. A mandate will help our economy and our businesses by not sending students back home early. I would like to strongly encourage you to vote yes on the mandate. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Nick Paul.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right. I live at 1015 Curtis Avenue. I have lived in Ames, Iowa for 34 years now. I was born and raised here. I thought I lived in a community of people that cared. After hearing a lot of the comments tonight, it's really disheartening. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I felt that I had the need to. I grew up with, many of you might remember this, no shirt, no shoes, no service. There was no complaint about that. We were okay with that. That's because it made sense. We aren't allowed to walk around in public naked, are we? We're all required to wear clothes. I come across a lot of comparisons and people trying to figure out why masks work. And I sit there and I come across a very good little thing, and it's, why do you wear pants? Well, Do you want somebody peeing on you? No. Well, you put on pants. Well, now your pants are at least getting wet. Well, if you're both wearing pants, now you're not even getting wet at all. You know, it's like there's just some. I thought we would be educated enough to decide this, and I also want to think, you know, like healthcare workers. How long do surgeons have to wear a mask? You know, you've heard of these crazy surgeries, 12 hours long, and you don't hear of any of them having any problems. Don't hear of any of them dying from wearing a mask. So I don't think that should actually be a concern. And I thank Jeremy for bringing up that part of the study that everybody keeps failing to leave out. I also like to come up to the a little article that I had read on the HIPAA website about the civil rights. And it says the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was what ended segregation in public places and also banned employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And some people are claiming it is their civil right to not wear a mask. This is not accurate, either according to Sullivan, who states there is no civil right to do as you choose. If by doing as so you present a risk of harm which infringes on the rights of others. He continues to say, the Civil Rights Act prevents discrimination based on race, religion, sex, and national origin. There is no protection for legitimate discrimination by business owners against customers who for health or any other reason will not wear a mask. I think I'm going to leave it at that right there, because I think that is a big argument that everyone wants to keep bringing up, that it's their right to not do it. It is clearly not. And I encourage this mask mandate. I think we need it. The fact that we are, our numbers aren't being compared to other states. They're being compared to other countries. Our numbers just in Ames and Iowa City are global numbers. They're comparing it to other countries. It's really disheartening. I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Mayor, I no longer see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay, we're going to close public input. Before we get into council discussion, I could circle back a couple of things that I highlighted from the comments that I would like to have some input. First of all, Cindy Paschen asked a question mark on how, if council would adopt a resolution or an ordinance, how that interface with the Story County Board of Supervisors, should they decide to implement one that may have different aspects, or may even have enforcement measures that maybe this one does not have.
Yes, and there's a provision of the Iowa Constitution that makes clear that in the case where a county and the city have both exercised their legislative authority and adopted ordinances, that the city ordinance would supersede the county one. The city's ordinance would prevail within the city limits of Ames. The county ordinance would be effective everywhere else in the county, but not in Ames, because the council has taken action on that issue.
And for any community that didn't adopt or have an ordinance in place, then the county ordinance would then apply, and that would be enforced by whom?
Yes, it would apply to be enforced by the county sheriff.
Not by local law enforcement.
Yes.
Secondly, her name is Katie Benz, talked about her children that had Asperger's. Can you comment to that in terms of does the exceptions cover that aspect of her concern?
Yeah, there's an exception in a 3D. Anyone who's been advised by a medical or behavioral health professional not to wear face coverings. And so as long as someone had that advice, then they would be exempt from the ordinance.
Okay.
Mark, to clarify, what proof would they have to have with them? Would they have to carry with them some kind of documentation of that?
Well, there's no requirement of that in the ordinance. So, you know, I would say, you know, if this was an ordinance with a penalty, if a citation was written, if they provided some evidence of that, we'd you know, drop the prosecution on the citation. Since there are no citations, I really just don't think that's even an issue, a real world issue.
It might not be from a standpoint of a penalty, but certainly I think the point of the caller or the person was that there's a stigma attached. So I had a client that was in a major store yesterday, and he has difficulty breathing even without a mask, and he didn't have a mask, and a store clerk came up and berated him in front of a crowd, and it was very embarrassing. And eventually he was able to explain that he can't physically wear a mask, and eventually their explanation was given, but long after the damage was done. So I mean, I want to separate the penalty side of this, but with also recognizing that we're going to have people judging others based upon whether they're wearing a mask or not. And I want to make sure we hear that. So, thanks.
And the other thing that was brought up, and I know that's been discussed, we discussed this previously, or council discussed this previously, and I think Deb Shildroth actually presented it, and that is just some of the potential metrics. I'm not sure that's germane, at least tonight, but and maybe it is. It's up to council on that one. So, to council, have any thing that when they heard from the 36 callers that they thought warranted, if you want to follow up on or answer any questions that I didn't catch?
I did hear a lot of people talking about a mandate with teeth, and I wanted to explain what we did at the start of the meeting. I made a motion to reconsider the motion that we had at the last council meeting to proceed with the draft ordinance, but with no penalty. I voted in the affirmative for that because I thought it would be better than nothing, but seeing with our case spike in the last week, more information about the Story County Board of Health, I wanted to bring it back up to be reconsidered. We did not get the votes on that to proceed, and so right now we're voting on the ordinance with no enforcement. I hope that answers any questions about how that vote came to be.
And if I could follow up, one of the things that I noticed, it was fascinating to hear from the community about this. People feel very strongly and for very closely held reasons. One of the things that I heard is that for people who are afraid that a mandate without a penalty is not even worth doing, there were a lot of people on the call tonight who were feeling an enormous amount of pressure from a mandate without penalty. So, you know, this is good news and bad news. But I do want to circle back into Mark because just to confirm, it's your advice to council hasn't changed regarding whether the penalties would be exceeding our authority or not?
Sorry. Yeah, an ordinance that has a penalty, I think my advice would be that would infringe upon the governor's authority under the emergency management and public health chapters of the Iowa Code. An ordinance with no penalties does not infringe upon the governor's authority. I don't think there's any case that can be made that it does if it doesn't have penalties.
And if I could ask a follow-up on another question about the possibility that a different type of ordinance would come down from Story County, which would then end up being displaced by a local ordinance in Ames if we do pass this ordinance. I haven't kept up to this, but when I listened earlier, I heard the one of the attorneys for Story County, Ethan Anderson, offer similar advice to the Board of Supervisors or the Board of Health that you're offering us to Ames, namely that the county, in his opinion at that time, wouldn't have the authority to issue a mandate. And I assume he was talking about a mandate with penalties, although that was unclear at the time. So just that's what I'm aware of from the past. My question for you, Mark, is, and maybe you haven't studied this, do you have any opinions about whether Story County's abilities to pass an ordinance differ from Ames's abilities with respect to penalties being in the ordinance?
I don't have any indication that it does differ. If you look at the Attorney General's opinion, the Attorney General says that, or the Assistant Attorney General who wrote it says that notes that the county boards of health have the authority to pass regulations that's provided for in the Iowa Code. Those regulations have to be adopted by the county board of supervisors. But the Attorney General's advice says that they would have the authority to do that if the governor's proclamations went away. That while the governor's proclamations are in effect, that they don't have the authority to do that. So that's the advice coming out of the Attorney General's office, and I have not studied the issue beyond that.
Okay, thanks. And I just, one other thing occurred to me when I was listening to people speaking. We did actually consider the issue of exempting houses of worship from this draft ordinance a couple of meetings ago. And I made the motion at that time, and it didn't get the votes, and so I'm not going to bring it up again. If someone else wants to bring it up, then that would be their business. But it is something we've discussed already. I just think people should know that. Thanks.
Other comments, discussion?
I'm struck tonight by the division in our community over this, and we just have to recognize that people are in different spots on this, and I'm a little frustrated with people that are very dismissive of people of different perspectives on this. It's just a reflection of where our community is, and you can throw rocks at us, but it's just the reality of where we are and the challenge of the hour. And I think it's very unfair to criticize people for having, these are very passionate and deeply held positions tonight. And there was a lot of pain on both sides of this. And so if we could focus on the main issues, I was just really struck by the variety of positions in this. I've never heard an issue that has come before council where people held such strongly held positions.
Can you all hear me without hearing me 2 or 3 times? I'm having trouble with the phone.
We have an echo on you, so you need to mute something else.
I've got it muted. It won't let me turn off the sound.
Okay.
So I apologize. I just wanted to clarify, there seems to be some misconception floating around that I don't support an enforceable ordinance. And that is not the case. I do support our ordinance as written, but I would also support an ordinance that actually had teeth in it that I think would deter people from breaking the ordinance. And so my vote last week was not because I don't support enforcement. It's because I don't think a $50 penalty is going to change behavior, and it could lead to the worst of all possible worlds, which is we have a fine that doesn't change behavior, and we have police interacting with citizens because we're now setting up an enforcement situation. And I don't think that that's a good situation. However, I believe that we have been advised that we can add the penalty clause to this ordinance if it turns out we are not getting compliance, or if Story County decides that they are going to mandate masks and have a different sort of enforcement mechanism. So I am happy to see us pass this ordinance quickly so we can get it in place and start educating. And then I remain open to adding an enforcement clause in the future. But I think others have noted on the calls that we will have 25,000 season ticket holders coming for football games. And to me, the important thing right now is that we get an ordinance passed so that we can start the messaging and the expectations for compliance with the ordinance.
I wanted to just jump in and mention that I really, I did like Dixon Jensen's suggestion quite a lot about the positive reinforcement. I would like us, if we could do that separately from the ordinance itself, but I would like to revisit that. It's an interesting concept to see if, the chamber and the ACVB would be interested in soliciting donations for that, perhaps, or anyway, I just wanted to jump in and say I did like that concept, but maybe we separate it from the ordinance itself.
Mark, Gloria brought up the option of adding to the ordinance in the future. Can you kind of talk about that in terms of what might be involved with that? You're muted again.
Sorry, I'll figure that out someday. It is always possible to amend an ordinance. There's been a vote now, and there's been a motion to reconsider, and you can't have two motions to reconsider on the same topic. It gets into kind of the fuzzy area because, doesn't mean you can never readdress the ordinance and make changes to it, or make changes to the penalties. I think after the process is over, assuming this is adopted, and if you come back to it, the council comes back a month from now and decides they want to add penalties, I think that would be okay. While it's still in process, you're reconsidering something that you've just decided not to reconsider, and that wouldn't be allowed.
Any other comments this evening? Discussion? All right, Council, you have before you a proposed ordinance, and to summarize, the sunset clause, there's been two adjustments made tonight. One was changing the sunset clause from May 31st, 2021 to December 31st, 2020. And Mark, can I just verify again, like on this one, if towards the end of December it's determined that another month or a couple of months, whatever, or thinking positively, if things really improve significantly, this can be extended or it can be terminated at an earlier date if it's so determined that it's appropriate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then Diane, if I could ask you to read again the revision that was approved to item 1A. That also is part of the proposed ordinance tonight.
Yes, so it was moved by Martin, seconded by Corriere to modify section 1A of the proposed ordinance so that it reads, outside whenever the person cannot stay 6 feet away from others not in the person's household. And that passed unanimously.
Okay. So hearing, if we have no further discussion, Council, I would look for a a motion on some sort of action regarding the first reading of the mandatory face covering ordinance as amended.
I'd move on first reading.
Second.
And seconded by, moved by Betcher, seconded by B.D. Hanson. Any further discussion?
So I've been pretty strongly opposed to any sort of ordinance that includes no enforcement, because I think that the times that we're in really call for some significant action. I am going to support the ordinance as is written, only because, as I've been talking about for weeks, the need to take some action to try and get back to some sort of normal in our community. Today I took my son to the doctor for a sports injury, and we were talking with the sports medicine physician that he had not seen before, and as he was going through sort of all the precautionary measures that my son needed to do to stay healthy, at the end, he asked Jordan if he knew the one thing that he had to do to ensure that he could keep playing this season and into the winter. And, you know, my teenager replied no, of course. And the doctor told him he needed to wear a mask, and that if he wore a mask, it was likely that his season would continue. And I think that just really hit home, because like I said, I've been talking for weeks about how we're watching our businesses suffer. We've seen them close their doors here in the last week due to the governor's orders. Our school district is going online for the first 2 weeks, and we don't know yet what other negative consequences will come as a result of our rising numbers. And so I am going to support the ordinance in the hopes that our community will start to step up and do the right thing for one another, not just for the sake of public health, but for the sake of our economy and our entire community.
Thank you.
And I would like to mention, we've had several discussions, and I've explained the reason why I'm not supporting this is because we're doing this in the face of our city attorney advising us not to do it, in the face of the county attorney who says we don't have authority, in the face of the Iowa Attorney General who says we don't have the authority. And I think that should really give us pause. I haven't heard any discussion either trying to explain that we do have the authority or acknowledging that we don't and explaining a rationale that the public health measures give us authority to create an ordinance to fill that gap. And so we can choose to not address the issue, but it doesn't nullify the fact that we all swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, and we're just sort of ignoring that in this activity. Now, I want to clarify as well, I think if you're voting in favor of this, you're doing this for the right reasons. I think you care about the community, you want to do what's best, and so even though we can disagree on the legal side of it, I want to make it clear that all of you have my respect for doing this for the right reasons. I think that's important to acknowledge.
Tim, I think Mark has made it very clear that an ordinance with no enforcement is not in conflict with the governor's orders, because we would not be enforcing the mandate, as long as I heard that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it makes it very different. To be honest, I don't know what a mandate without a penalty is. When this first was brought up, I asked Mark, do we have any examples of mandates or requirements without penalties? He said, we have none. And so I don't exactly know what this is. And probably no one really does either. So at the most, realistically, what we've done is we've created a resolution without any teeth to it. And if we were going to be honest with ourselves, that's probably what we should call it, is just a resolution. And I would join that, and we could have had a unanimous vote. But instead, we've taken a path that we want to call it something, perhaps to give it the appearance of doing something more serious. But I think Amber has got a point that we need to hear, that if you're really serious about this, then you need to have teeth to it. And so it's hard to tell the public that we're on board and we're serious about this issue, and then we have no penalty at all. I just think it's hard for me to understand the seriousness of this. There's no penalty attached to it. So hopefully we'll get on and just be able to discuss some of the positive things like Dixon's suggestion. I have a proposal as well, but it's hard for me to imagine, to really understand even what this is.
Any further comments before we vote?
I'm a little confused now. I think that we had a pretty clear discussion where we agreed that it's unusual to have an ordinance without a penalty in it, and that legally speaking, it was most readily likened to a resolution. So we could stop everything and put a new agenda item and do a resolution next week, but I don't think we want to do that. And I think that I agree that that's weird, but that is completely different than saying that our city attorney is advising us that we don't have authority to do this. That's just not what's going on here. That's not what I've heard, and if I've misheard it, then I wish someone would correct me. But I think that the point of this compromise is to get us in a place where we actually have good faith belief in what the ordinance says right at the beginning, where it says that it is the intent and belief of the Ames City Council that this ordinance does not conflict with provisions of the Governor of Iowa's Public Health Disaster Emergency Proclamation, which is currently in effect. So that's crucial to me in support of this. So I think we have a disconnect in our interpretation. I just wanted to make that clear. Thanks.
Okay. All right, roll call, please.
Moriarty.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Nay.
Junk.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Council, we have a couple options. One option to be is typically it will require 3 readings. An option before the council is that they could move to suspend the rules. It will take a 5-person affirmative vote to do that, to waive the rules and have second and third reading and adoption this evening. Or absent 5 votes, then it will come back to council on September 8th for the second reading.
Mayor, I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Then moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Moriarty.
Aye.
All right. Entertain a motion on second reading of the mandatory face covering ordinance.
Move on second.
Moriarty.
Second.
Dunk seconded. Roll call, please.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Nay.
Junk.
Aye.
Moriarty.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion on third reading and adoption of mandatory face covering ordinance.
Move on third.
Moriarty and Junk. Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Nay.
Junk.
Aye.
Moriarty.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carried. All right. Next item on the agenda is disposition of communications to council. There are 2.
Mayor, if I could just ask a follow-up question.
Certainly.
There are still a lot of people, I think, who are paying attention to these proceedings. Having suspended the rules and completed all 3 readings, when does this ordinance go into effect?
Mark, you want to go ahead and thank you, David?
Yeah, the ordinance will then go into effect when it's published, which will be Friday.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, and also if people are still on the call interested, if there's any additional follow-up that Brown potentially mentioned and Tim indicated, that would come under council comments, which will be very shortly. 2 items in disposition of communication to council. One is just a letter that you have a copy of that was emailed out to property owners, landlords, and managers of rental housing units here in Ames. And that is primarily just for your information. No action necessary. Item 2 is an email from Brigitte. I'm sorry, I'm gonna not pronounce her last name correctly, but regarding adding all ragweed types to the noxious weed list. Steve, any comments or direction to council on how to proceed if they want to proceed on this?
If you want to proceed, I would refer to us for a memo.
I would move to refer that to staff for a memo.
Second.
Moved by Edie Hansen. Is that Amber? Is that you, Corey? Seconded. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Okay, go to council comments, and Tim, we'll start with you tonight.
Okay, I sent the council a email about a proposal that I hope will get some traction tonight. I would like to suggest that we follow the example of Des Moines in helping to distribute masks in the community. And I don't have a dollar amount in mind, but I would ask that I would move that we would ask the staff to look at our available balance in the council contingency and help us think through a proposal given what other expenditures we might have from those funds, but give us a proposal for an amount that we might expend on the purchase of masks to help with distribution in the community.
Second.
I'm sorry, who is that? Is that Gloria?
Amber or Bronwyn, one of us.
Brown, Amber, thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Carried. Anything else, Tim?
I'd love the privilege of working with Dixon's proposal. We just don't have people stepping up like this and being so generous and trying to think outside of the box and a way to find a positive reinforcement of the behavior that we're seeking. So it seems like Steve, would you suggest that we refer this to staff? Is there some fine tuning that would need to be done with this?
Well, it's not fine tuning. There's a lot of logistics involved. Do you want us to try to raise money first?
I do think we need to maybe recognize the practicality of asking some of our partners. I know that the chamber and the CVB in particular, because they were mentioned, are both struggling just like a lot of entities. They've laid off staff, and I just think we need to keep that in mind when we're asking people to donate to something that just may not be realistic for them. We also have the United Way campaign starting next week. And I don't necessarily want to see us fundraising for something that would compete with the funds that support our human service agencies and all of the businesses that will be participating in that.
At the very least, Dixon's willing to put forward a sum of money to get started.
Right.
I just don't know procedurally what would be the logical next step for us to be able to accept his generous offer. And
Dan Colhane, president of the chamber, just said thank you.
So Steve, any thoughts on what we might do?
To accept Dixon's offer of $10,000?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll have to come back with some parameters. How much per gift card? Who do you get it from? Who do you want to give it to? Who gives it out? You want the police officers just hand it out as they see people on the street? Purchase those. There's a lot of logistics.
But there are some additional details. Amber, your sound may still be on. Maybe not. Okay. So I would move that we direct staff to visit further with Dixon Jensen about his offer and come back to us at the next meeting practicable with some additional details that we might move on.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
I would add, I mean, I know what Amber's saying about asking the other entities for funding, but I think we could maybe ask, I mean, a lot of the Chamber's businesses have been shut down, and so, you know, of course, but some haven't, you know, some are still moving strongly, and we had one business owner who said that they would be willing to chip in for gift cards too. It would be nice if we could maybe like ask who might be interested in chipping in for that. Maybe other people would that have the means to. So I don't know. It'd be nice to see that in there somehow.
Overall, I like this motion and I appreciate Dixon's offer. And I hope that we can work something out, even if it's not exactly what is proposed in the email.
Well, one would option be too is if staff could maybe just check with a few of the people that he suggested and just say, are there resources available? All it takes is a phone call. And if they just say, no, we can't, get a better idea on that as well too. I mean, maybe just letting staff run with it and just do a little due diligence and see, and then report back next Tuesday night. Does that make sense?
Next Tuesday? Oh, just topic, logistics, the whole program.
Tim, what was your, I'm sorry, was your motion at the earliest practical?
Yeah, so I'd like to give some discretion to the staff. I don't know, I don't want to presuppose what they have in their workload and all that's involved in this. So that's why I'm giving, you know, as soon as it's reasonable to come back.
Well, we have a regular council meeting next Tuesday night, a workshop the following Tuesday night, and then another council meeting the following Tuesday night. So we have at least 3 more meetings each week. So, all right, everyone understand the motion?
Just a word of thanks to Dixon. This is leadership. It's creative thinking, and I love it when people come up with ideas like this. So thank you, Dixon.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Anything else, Tim? David.
Hello. I have a couple things tonight. The first, I was just delighted to see this in the Story County Sun, a big article pointing out that the First National Bank has donated $10,000 to the Ames Public Library Friends Foundation towards the purchase of another 50 hotspots for the Ames community to be able to check out and use. There's another example of leadership. That's just really great. And in this time when people are spending a lot more time at home and online than they used to, it couldn't have been timed better. So just kudos to them. I think that was a really great move. And also following up on the motion about looking at our funding to see if we can buy and distribute some masks. Given the ordinance that we just passed, I would like to move to ask staff to develop some signage that would be appropriate for placing at businesses, saying something along the lines of like, you know, Ames city ordinance, face coverings required, just something like that. I mean, a lot of flexibility in the design. But I know we've got a great team of community partners who are trying to do something thematic graphically. And I'm sure they can come up with a great thing. And okay, that motion was super long. Okay, so let me start out. The motion is to ask staff to design a sign referring to the ordinance for placement at businesses and to consider the possibility of paying for the production and delivery of signs to interested businesses.
Second.
Lori, seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Anything else, David?
Thank you very much.
Rachel?
Yeah, so I enjoyed attending a conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the other members of council and the mayor this week, led by Dr. Kesho Scott and some of our asset partners. And I'm really looking forward to more DEI training as a council together, specifically related to policy making. But that's it.
Thank you. Rowan?
Nothing for me tonight.
Thank you. Nicole?
I'm just very glad that we got the ordinance passed tonight instead of waiting. I was really excited about that. I didn't know we could even do that. So that was a good surprise.
Thank you. Amber?
Nothing for me.
Gloria?
Since we now have passed this ordinance, I would like to move that we ask the city manager to contact ISU Athletic Director Jamie Pollard and see if it's possible for messages to be sent out to the season ticket holders regarding the requirements for the new ordinance, as we did with the game day parking fines.
Is there a second?
Second.
David, thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else, Gloria?
I'm looking forward to I guess it's next week. Boy, this COVID thing is COVID time, you know. The ITGA real training, some of that diversity, equity, and inclusion training that Rachel has talked about. We now have a 12-person team from the city of Ames and Iowa State who are going to be participating. And I think that's going to be really exciting, and I hope it goes swimmingly. And thank you everyone for putting up with my horrible internet connection. I think I heard what everybody said, and I thank all those people who stayed with us throughout that conversation.
Anything else? Very good. Well, just some few closing thoughts. We had 36 people address council tonight. And as was mentioned, divergent views. And I made some opening comments last week before we got started with a request that our community pull together and work together and avoid division like we did, not like we did division-wise, but pulling together on August 10th and thereafter after the derecho hit. And council is aware, we were aware that there are going to be people that were going to be pleased and those will not be pleased with what's going to transpire. And it's being done with the intent to do what's best for the community Ames. And so one of the things that was brought up was education. And in some conversations with some council members that I've had, there are some education means that have been put forth, and tomorrow I'm going to be discussing with staff ways to try and publicize. There are exceptions. I go back to the person who has sons with Asperger's, that there's no intent to put them in a position that would cause them to have issues. There's going to be other conditions as well. I really am disheartened to hear about potential shaming going on in stores. And I like to think that maybe by some encouragement and discussion that they're being embracing through partnership with our individual entities, starting with the chamber from business standpoint, medical community, Iowa State, and on Main Street, Campus Town Access. But basically to get the message out is that, look, we need to be in this together, and shaming is just not an appropriate way to approach the situation. So anyway, be looking, for that, and as Mark alluded to, the ordinance should be published on Friday, and it will be effective on that date. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening.
Move to adjourn.
All right, David, move to adjourn, and we are adjourned. Thank you, council, and thank you all those who participated and watched online. We greatly appreciate your time, and a lot of valuable input to the community, to the council. So good evening.